Hi, I'm Jamie. This is Dead Dodge Garage, and this is the 2024 Dodge Charger Daytona RT Plus. It's also the very first brand new Dodge I have ever touched in my life. Boop! Before we look at the car, I have to give my largest thanks to 5-star Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram, they also have Fords, in Aberdeen, Washington. This is their very first new Charger on the lot, and they literally called me the moment it got here. I also have to extend my sincerest thanks to my good friend Dustin Hansen, a salesman here at 5-star. He's actually been in a video or two on the channel in the past, and he's sold us a couple of cars. In fact, he sold my brother his 2020 Chevy Camaro. You know, that horribly green thing. It is kind of an awesome car though. Now I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Jamie, that is not a dead Dodge. That is just about the furthest thing from a dead Dodge you could imagine. And that's true. But I did bring a rusty old one along with me to compare. This, of course, is my 1968 Dodge Charger, and I figured the best possible thing I could do is park these two next to each other. I'd wager no one's done that yet. Now, because we're at a Dodge dealer today, we also have the luxury of other Dodges. This is a 2021 Challenger RT Scat Pack 392 car, and I really wanted to get this next to the Daytona as well so we could compare them. As you know, the Challenger is now gone. The Charger is going to fill both slots as a 2-door and a 4-door. Currently, they're only 2 doors. So this is a good comparison to make. You're going to have to forgive our local typical spring weather patterns. You know, it's been really nice all week. Now it's pouring rain. Welcome to it. For that reason, I'd very much like to hop in this thing. The heated seats would be really nice about now, but I've got to spend at least a few minutes on the outside of this car. I don't know about you, but I've kind of been keeping tabs on these cars ever since this design was first announced. I gotta admit, I was pretty excited when I saw it. The lines are still relatively true to the old second generation Charger. They still have the Coke bottle details. They're simplified a little bit, but it still looks like a Charger to me. When I saw this design as a concept, I didn't think they'd ever make it for real, but they did, and here it is. If you know me, then you know that my favorite car of all time, with no exceptions and no close comparisons, is the 1968 Dodge Charger. And so the closest that a brand new car can get to that, well, the better. This detail on the door, where the front body line crosses over the rear body line, that is lifted straight off of these second generation Chargers. For the new car, they have done away with the old scoops that were on the doors. Those too were reminiscent of the old Charger. I don't dislike that. It has a nice smooth look to it. I do like the crisp body line in the middle as well. I think I like the front end on this car. I love the Fratzonic emblem. It's kind of cool they brought that back. I'm sure you'll notice it looks all flashy and obnoxious in the camera. That's because it's LED, and there's not much we can do about that. Trust me, in person, it looks cool. It's very angry looking. Obviously, it's pretty similar to the outgoing Challenger. I do miss this. Look at this. It's subtle, but it actually has a bit of a rolled edge right there at the back. Again, like the second generation car. It's not as aggressive, but it's there. I also think the new racetrack design on the tail is probably the coolest thing ever. And a glowing Fratzonic in the middle, well, that helps too. It's not the same. It couldn't ever be the same as an old Charger. But the number of details they borrowed and brought along into the latest generation, I just think it's neat. Hemi noises. Oh, Hemi noises. We're gonna talk about the noises that this car makes in a minute. You'll notice I turned them off. Yeah, we'll get there. Just bear with me. I have an old Charger and a new Charger, so I really want to compare the two as best I can, just to really drive this point home. Look at the haunches on this thing. It's like a factory wide body. I don't actually know how wide it is, but it looks very wide. That detail, again, essentially lifted off of the 68 to 70 car, although there are more pronounced bulges around the wheels on this one. I wish they'd gotten a red one. Oh well. I know I mentioned the Fratzonic emblem. In case you're not familiar with that, that was part of Dodge's identity in the 1960s and into the early 70s. It's a triangular looking design. It's got the 3 points there and sort of another triangle in the middle. In case you're wondering what Fratzonic means, it doesn't mean anything. They just kind of made it up. I remember the early press photos they released where they showed the Fratzonic in the middle on the front and I think on the rear. And I've just always thought that is so cool. Yes, it's another bit of iconography they dragged out of history to put back on this new car, but what an icon to grab. The side profile is where this thing really differs from the new Challenger. Dustin had to move that Challenger back over there. He's bringing us another car to look at. But it's very distinct, the difference in the roof. You'll notice it's a lot further back. And that's actually really nice because you can actually fit full-size people in the back seat of this car. There's something else interesting about it too. This is a hatchback. And not only that, it's a crazy magical hatchback. It hatches itself. Rad. I could get an amp and several guitars in there, no problem. Now again, this is the fancy Daytona RT model, and it has the electrified hatch. Judging by the manual pull handles, there must be a more basic version that is not power. Personally, I think that would be fine. Features like this tend to break eventually. I'd be okay without it in this case. It is quite convenient though. Ooh, if I put my head in there, will it stop automatically? Another little styling touch. This could be found on the previous generation Charger as well. Obviously, the back window is not set in like the 68 to 70 car, but they gave just a little tiny hint of that flying buttress line. It's subtle, but I think it's cool. Train! I guess this is what they're calling keys these days. Anyway, because we're at a new Ford and Dodge dealership, we're able to line up interesting comparisons like this. This, of course, our new electric Charger. And this is a new electric Mustang. I've never driven an electric car before. This is going to be the first time I've ever experienced one. I fully appreciate and understand that there will be people out there who are grumpy because Dodge has built a brand new car and called it a Charger, but it doesn't have a gasoline engine. No Hemi. It's got electric motors running it. But I can't help but look at this thing and see a real Charger. It has those lines. It has a style and a presence to it that impresses me. You know, I've pretty much dedicated my life to keeping old Chrysler products like my Charger here on the road. Those are where my passion lies. These new cars are not like those, but there's still a bit of DNA there. There's something I appreciate about them. That's why I love these new Challengers. They have the look, they have the sound, at least if there's a Hemi under the hood like this one. They're modern cars. You can use them like modern cars, and there is a lot to like about that. The same sorts of people that will be upset there's a Charger name on this are the kind of people that got really upset they slapped a Mustang name on this. All I can say is, this is a two-door sports car. I'm fine with it. Oh yeah. I think we can all agree if they had called this the new Ford Edge, we wouldn't have the same strange knee-jerk reaction to it. I bet if I were to drive this car, I'd like it. So I'm not gonna do that. Anyway, Charger. Hey, here we are under the hood of the Charger. You can actually see more than I expected. I'm assuming this is an inverter here. There's some magic electrical wizardry up here. Yeah, the sum total of my electric car experience to this point is I've installed a few Prius hybrid batteries. That's pretty much it. I know everyone watching this wants to know if a Hemi fits in here. Yeah, I think it does. I'm pretty sure. We can get a little peek under its skirt here. There's the electric power steering motor. Also, we can just barely see some drive motor there. Because there's a bunch of extra room where an engine would be, you do get this little storage cubby thing. It's not huge by any means, but I could see storing, I don't know, wiper fluid, some clean socks. Wait, what does that do? Oh, that's an escape button. Who are you gonna fit in there that needs to escape? This is an interesting sticker I've never seen before. Apparently, it's instructing fire department personnel to cut a wire in this region to kill all power to the car. I'm not exactly sure why there's like a football helmet on fire. That's pretty interesting. As an enthusiast, I personally would like to see a gas engine in here. That's probably obvious. And I have a feeling a lot of people watching this video are going to feel the same way. I am definitely looking forward to the release of the Turbo Hurricane inline 6 powered cars. I will absolutely test drive one of those as soon as I can. But I think this is worth checking out too, because I have a feeling it's gonna be fun. You will have noticed that this car says RT Stage 1 on it, which of course implies the existence of a Stage 2 and perhaps even beyond. At this point, we're not exactly sure what that means. I can tell you that this version of the car makes 460 something horsepower, and the Scat Pack version makes 630. I can also tell you this version of the car has 404 foot-pounds of torque, while the Scat Pack has over 600. We did more reading. Apparently the Scat Pack is the Stage 2, and that's the car that has the direct connection power upgrade. All right, I think I've stood out in the rain long enough. Let's check out the inside of the Charger. Obviously, this is a brand new electric car. And as is the case with most brand new electric cars, the dash is pretty naked, pretty simplistic. You don't need to have gauges like you do in a gas car, so instead you get screens. And this is interesting, in a way. It's kind of cool having nav here, for example. This car also has a heads-up display. I'm not sure if you're going to be able to see that at all, but it's kind of neat. Maybe this is just me, but I've been resistant to the whole sticking giant iPads onto the dash of every new car thing ever since the trend started. I do understand the functionality of it. There's a lot to like. I don't know. I kind of miss just having an old school dash and a stereo. This is not a stereo. This is the car. All of the settings are in here. You can turn on the heated seats, for example, which I'm totally going to do right now. Ooh, and heated steering wheel. Obviously, again, this is an upscale version of this car. A base model, I can only assume, will not have all of that fancy stuff. I was a bit worried that the inside of this car would not really look or feel like a Dodge. And it kind of doesn't. It's very different. The wheel is reminiscent of the older Challenger, Chargers, and Rams. There are certain things you can point to say, yes, this reminds me of an older Dodge. But it's largely new. It's largely un-Dodge-like. And I didn't think I was going to like it, but I kind of do. It's comfortable. It's nice and quiet in here. Obviously, there's no rumbling engine or anything. It's spacious. You got little cubbies everywhere. My Challenger is by no means cramped, but this feels less cramped. The visibility is better. Also, this is kind of neat. The fancy LEDs all around the car. I'm not sure about this design. I can't help but notice that the vertical lines here on the dash are reminiscent of my 68 Charger. Of course, you can change the colors in here, which I'll have to do. It's got to be blue, or like, don't bother. Nice. You can dim them, too. Is this silly? Yeah. Do I like it? Yeah. I have noticed the screen is not the fastest thing. You know, I mean, it's not Apple II or anything. I know this isn't unique to this car. Remember, I live in the 20th century. There's a fancy wireless phone charging pad, and it totally works with my iPhone. Also, this thing does the Apple CarPlay, of course. I won't be demonstrating any of that. I'm mostly interested in how this thing drives. It's more comfortable than my Challenger. I like the seats a lot more. And my butt's warm, that's kind of nice. I guess I should direct your attention to the gigantic glass roof. Again, I know other cars have had these for years, but I like it. I think it's cool. I don't think I'll find myself looking through it very often, but the natural light in here, what little is allowed to come through that crazy tint, is pretty nice. Look at all this space in the back. It's amazing. Seriously, there's room for actual grown-up legs here. And the seats look just as nice as the front. Also, I think they're heated. The level of backseat luxury is ridiculous. Okay, it's just heated seats and some USB charging ports, but that's nice. Fold down cup holders. Also, because hatchback, those seats totally fold flat. And then, much like the 66 Charger, you have a storage area that goes from all the way at the back to the back of the front seats. I'm pretty sure I could fit my gigantic 215 base stack in this car, no problem. Just for comparison's sake, I hopped in the 2021 Challenger. This dash, of course, is the one they got in, 2013? And it was shared by Challengers and Chargers all the way to the end. I have always liked this dash. I like the lines. I like the gauges. I don't mind the little multi-purpose screen on it. I like the big touch stereo. Of course, my Challenger has the slightly smaller touch stereo. Just in general, I've always thought this was a cool interior. It has nice touches that harken back to the older Challengers, like the asymmetrical console and the shape of the door panel. It's just comfortable and nice. It is not spacious. You could not use that word to describe this car in any way. Unless you were comparing it to, say, a 2020 Chevy Camaro. Compared to those, they are palatial. But look at this back seat. There's no legroom. That is not a thing in this car. I daily drive a 2018 Challenger, essentially the same exact thing as this, and my kid has to crawl back there every day, and it is a gigantic pain. She fits, for now, but it's not going to be long till she outgrows that back seat. And if you wanted to put adults back there, yeah, just don't bother. It should be noted that these seats flip forward as well, just like the new Charger, but it's not the same hatchback layout and you have the package shelf in the way there. I have put that same bass amp in my Challenger. It is a gigantic pain. You would not believe what it took to make that happen. Since we're currently sitting in a 392 Hemi Challenger, I do think I'm obligated to do this. We likes this. A few weeks ago, I drove my 1981 Dodge Challenger over here, visited with Dustin, and I was checking this car out at the time. I sat in it, I hit the button, I revved the engine, then I hit this. I thought about just bringing my red one over here and going home in this car. Hemi noises and a warm butt. That would be nice. But none of that changes the fact that the car is really not that practical. I'll always love these things though. I mean that. As these cars age and prices come down, I'll start collecting these like I've always collected A-bodies. The new Charger absolutely wins on practicality. No question. It is still a two-door car, but it's a way more usable two-door car. I suppose Tesla is the name in electric cars these days. Despite the interesting quality issues they have, various parts falling off and what have you. They're kind of the new Prius, you know? They have a similar look and a similar trendy quality. Five Star does not happen to have a Tesla on the lot to compare to, but they do have a Nissan Leaf. If you want a more basic electric car, well, it's gonna look a lot like this. There are some cheap plastic sticks. It's a weird little ball shifter. It's got a screen too, but it's much smaller. This is fine. It's a cheap electric car, lightly used. I'm sure if you just need an electric car, that's great. It's not really what I want in life. This is seriously reminding me of like an early 2000s Corolla. Don't know why. So quiet. So Leaf. Yeah, I like the inside of the Charger a whole lot more. It has a modern sports car vibe to it, obviously. The flowing lines, the leather stitching, and that's cool. The seats feel great. I just like being in here. My hat will never hit that glass roof, ever. I could be 8 inches taller and I'd still fit. I think we've seen everything we need to see at this point, so the next thing to do is drive this car. Okay, I've found one complaint. On the Challenger, this is a piece of plastic and it sticks out farther, so it's a little easier to grab the belt. This kind of sucks. It looks pretty, but it's hard to reach. It's so far tucked in there. It reminds me of second-gen Rams, which is not a good thing. Again, obviously this is an electric car and there's a bit of a learning curve. For one thing, there's a setting called creep. When you turn this on, it'll kind of act like a gas car. It'll essentially idle itself away from a stop. With it turned off, it just doesn't move, which is really interesting. It has a sports car wheel. It's flat. I've never driven anything like that before. Well, except maybe one of those goofy early 60s Chryslers. It's so quiet. Ooh, heated mirrors. How do you turn those on? Probably that. Obviously, we're kind of in traffic here, so we can't yet test the full 453 horsepower or whatever it is. So far, it does not feel slow, I'll tell you that. It rides nice. It's a lot smoother than the Challenger. And yeah, the difference in seats is pretty pronounced. The Challengers have like that bolster that hugs your legs. This has a lot less of that. Definitely more comfortable. I could sit in here all day. I don't know why my hand's on the shifter. This does nothing after going into drive. Now these cars do have flappy paddles behind the wheel, and I'd like to figure out how those work. Apparently they can simulate gear shifting. Apparently they can also be used to increase the level of regenerative braking you get. Whoa, the nav screen glitched out. That was crazy. Huh, that looks like a satellite picture. It's very interesting driving something this quiet. There's no sound. There's a little bit of road noise, and that's it. Now in a minute here, we will have to test the Fratzonic chambered exhaust for science. Random back road. Getting off the highway, I should have tested the brakes more thoroughly, but I wasn't thinking. Let's test them now. Yep, they're brakes. I haven't been out here in ages. Wow. It's nice here today, despite being very wet. Oh wow. It yells at you and tells you not to roll over parking things. I didn't even notice the center console box thing. It's almost just like the old Challenger. It even has the same asymmetrical design. I don't think I've mentioned yet that you can open the door with a button. There is also a mechanical handle in case of battery death or anything like that. Multiple seat settings. Wow. You know, I'm no expert on modern vehicle design or anything, but I think this car is beautiful. Again, I wouldn't have picked silver. I'd like it to be red or black. That would be cool. But it's just got a great look to it. It's such a nice mix of futuristic and classic lines. There's a good amount of second-gen Charger in there, but it is distinctly a new car, and I don't dislike it. I haven't really drawn any attention to this interesting styling choice. The grille is actually open, and air is allowed to flow upward over the hood. It's kind of strange. You don't notice it from most angles, really. From the front, it just kind of looks like a grille with some light behind it. From the driver's seat, you really just see that little bulge in the hood. I assume there's some functional aerodynamic reason they did that. It's very interesting looking. I don't think there's any other car that has a feature like that on the road. Oh yes, this car also has cameras everywhere. It has that fancy 360-degree view thing. You can pull up the cameras while you're going down the road as well, although it takes a couple button presses. We're going through some of the fancy science screens on here, looking at things like the autonomous driving sensors and what have you. And I can't help but notice they've actually got a 4-door version of the car in here in the pages, even though it doesn't technically exist yet. A lot like the old Scat Pack cars and such, this thing has performance pages. It's got power output figures on the motors, it's got wheel slip gauges, it's got G-force, it's got all kinds of things. This thing has timers built in so you can replicate a quarter-mile drag pass. There is so much in here, it's insane. Apparently, a common feature in electric cars is something called one-pedal driving. Basically, you keep your foot on the gas pedal, and when you take your foot off of the gas pedal, it slows down. Now, it's interesting in this car, the efficacy of that system is based on which driving mode you're in. When you're in sport mode, when you let off of the gas, it, stops you. And I suppose the reason for that would be track driving. It's essentially going to just slow you down going into a corner. You never have to move your foot. When it's in the normal auto driving mode, this is much less pronounced. It still slows you down, but it doesn't quite feel like it's slamming on the brakes the same way. Now, essentially what this one pedal trick is doing is changing the amount of regeneration you have. And you can use the paddles to step that up. There are 3 different stages. And on that most aggressive one, it is pronounced. It really slows you down. I mean, it shifts you forward in the seat. It brakes so hard. So we're coming back up to the highway now, and we've got to do a bit of an acceleration test. We are in sport mode, which means the traction control is off. Whether that means it's fully off or kind of sort of off, I don't know. I do know in cars like my Challenger, even when you turn the traction control off, you don't necessarily just get all the wheel slip. Anyway, let's see what this is like. It's like that. It just gets up to speed with no issue whatsoever. Let's try it again. Wow, that is amazing. Huh. It is not slow. There is no drama. Oh, it's yelling at me. I got too close to the white line. Of course, like many fancy modern cars, it has lane departure features and things like that. And there's a mode on here that will actively assist you in steering and staying in the road where you should be. This feels monstrously torquey. That is, dude. The entire nose of the car lifts at highway speed when you accelerate. Yeah, it's not slow. Wow. It's just instant. It's pretty fun. It gets to the speed limit very quickly. So we're running down the road in sport mode still here, and I wanted to show you the sport screen. Obviously, it's got tire pressure monitors. That's great. You probably don't need to see that all the time. I can almost guarantee you this screen is customizable, just like the screens on the older Challenger. Also, a minute ago, we went through a school zone, and it actually popped up and said school zone 20 miles an hour here. I continue to be impressed with the adjustable regenerative braking. On the most aggressive setting, it really feels like you're slamming on the brake pedal. You can see the nose of the car dive. Yeah, essentially this left part of the screen that was showing tire pressure, it's the same as the pages in the older car. And again, all of this is customizable. I'm sure you could set this up however you want it. Anyway, we found a bit of a sportier road here, so we're going to test the handling of the Charger. Something I'm very interested in. I kind of like going around corners from time to time. Zero drama. And again, we're running in sport mode, and apparently the traction control is off. I haven't felt any tire slip whatsoever. I suppose I could try harder. Yeah. It's pretty nice. It corners flat. It feels really nice. The one thing I will say is, going around corners at speed, suddenly I am missing that extra bolstering in the seat. It is just effortlessly fast. I don't think I've even mentioned, this car is all-wheel drive. Of course, there will be lower trim levels that do not have all-wheel drive, but this one does. It's very nice. That's probably the reason I haven't experienced any burning rubber whatsoever. Wow. It tilts and telescopes. The lane departure thing is on it. It loves to yell at me for going too close to the yellow lines. This car would hate me if I owned it. I've never been capable of, driving straight. I like the roof. In the rain, you can't see much, but it's cool. Yeah, it's just mad at me all the time. Personally, I view lane lines as optional. They're more of a suggestion. It's very good at passing. It just goes. You don't have to drop any gears. Just put your foot down, aim the car, and it cooperates. This is really good fun. I suppose at this point, we have to test the sound. It's one of the most unique things about this electric car. No other electric car does this, and it's a point of contention. It's a point of contention for me too. I haven't turned it on at this point because I kind of think we should just let an electric car be an electric car. However, I have to wonder if this adds something to the driving experience. So I'm going to hit the button. From where I'm sitting, it just sounds like an engine. Let's see what it does when I do this. Wow. Huh. You know, from this seat, I don't hate it. It adds something to it. It actually makes the car feel faster. It makes it feel more alive, you know? I was afraid it might be laggy. You know, there would be a delay between when you hit the pedal and when it makes noise. And it's not like that. I don't know. It still feels a little, what's the word? Disingenuous? It feels a little cheap. But from this seat, when you hit the pedal and you hear that, it's kind of crazy. It kind of sounds like, I don't know, the USS Enterprise. It has a whistle, a hum. Okay, alright, okay. Alright. That is... yeah, it's weird. I don't hate it, but it's very weird. One really has to wonder how they arrived at that specific sound. Dude, it sounds like a Hemi idling. From in here it does, anyway. You kind of expect it to shift a gear. You know, shift a gear. But it doesn't. It just kind of fades out. There's nothing else like that. I don't know what else to say about it. We're doing a big loop here to go on the fun curvy road, and now we're hitting the highway to go back to the dealership. On this sporty on-ramp, which I often test my Challenger on, I got this thing up to highway speed rapidly. And because I've turned the exhaust sound off, you don't get that sense of how fast you're going. This thing is dangerous. I mean, if you just put your foot into it, there's no drama, there's no noise, there is simply speed. And even, again, at highway speed, when you do that, it picks up, it goes. And this is not the fast one. This is the middle one. It's pretty impressive. Adaptive cruise control. I know Mercedes had this like way back in the mid-2000s. It's pretty much ubiquitous at this point in history. I've never had it. I have test driven a Lincoln in the past that had it, and that's pretty much it. This thing is awesome. And the braking is quite good. Oh look, an old Charger. Place hands on wheel. Okay, but it steers itself. It did it the first time coming through the dip back there. And what's interesting is it chose the inside line. It wanted to go the fast way through the corner where I tend out this way. So it just kind of did it. It's not like it jerks on the wheel or anything. It just slowly moves it that way without your input. This is not a fully self-driving car. You can't just go down the road like this. It actually yells at you to put your hands back on the wheel. Obviously, I have no experience with a Tesla or any other type of car that does this, so it's still new to me. But I find it very interesting. I'm sorry, but this will never get old. The car, it like squats in the back, it lifts in the front, and it launches. Of course, this is an electric car. An electric car runs on batteries, and those batteries are depleted as you drive. When I got here today, the screen showed 170 mile range. We've driven about 32 miles, I believe. So we've doubled the number of miles on this car. And the range now shows 122 miles. But understand, first, well, I stomped the loud pedal. I guess it's not the loud pedal in this car. Anyway, I stomped the skinny one a bunch of times. And also, we let this thing sit here and idle, running the air system and the lights and all of that stuff for like an hour and a half. So obviously that's going to use up some juice. Now, obviously I'm not an electric car guy. Thankfully, we do have specs to look at here. This will vary a lot. They do specify a driving range when fully charged of 268 miles. If you were driving it in, say, the lower power mode, and you were driving like a sane person, I'm sure you could achieve something a bit closer to that. Obviously, the way we're testing this car today, we won't see that sort of range. Now, they do list a charge time of 10 hours here. That, like everything else with an electric car, can vary based on conditions. That spec is essentially from dead, 0% charged, to 100% charged. Obviously, you're never going to want to run this thing down to 0%. And generally speaking, you're only going to charge it to about 80%. So you're never going to actually have a 10-hour charge time, but it could take a while. That spec is based on a level 2 charger. If you use a fast charger, obviously this will be greatly reduced. Apparently, on a level 3 fast charger, you can go from about 20% to about 80% in roughly an hour. Because this is a fancy modern electric car, obviously it has nav built in, and that nav has a function that will find you charging stations. Apparently, in theory, you can use this to plan a road trip, say across the country, and it will figure out where you need to stop and how long you need to stop there. Now, this is probably obvious, but this car is brand new, and I would not necessarily expect this system to work perfectly just yet. Tell you what, I knew we had some chargers locally, but there are a lot more than I thought. I found a different vehicle performance info screen. Neat. I think the more times I hit this button, the more fancy stuff I'm going to find. I've had the heated seat going in this thing the entire time because I enjoy luxury. But Dustin just activated the cool seat without my consent. It's pretty nice. Maybe not so nice on a day like this. I would be remiss if I did not mention that I saw this nav screen glitch out a couple times. Again, this is a brand new car with brand new programming and brand new apps, and I'm sure this will be improved over time. But there were a few moments going around corners where it kind of looked like a glitchy satellite picture. I think I'm just the wrong height. There's a clock over here and an outside thermometer over here, but I can't see those. Maybe if I did this. Yeah, that helps. I found something I really like about the big fancy infotainment screen. You can turn it off. You know, in my old Ram with the big touchscreen, there was a button, like this one, that turns the screen off, but it doesn't actually turn it off. Dustin found more buttons as well. First, you can turn all the parking warnings off and the lane thing off. That's cool. The traction control is turned off automatically when you activate sport mode, but you can turn it back on. And you can also hold this button, and then it turns off all kinds of things. It actually turns off the automatic emergency braking and fully deactivates the stability control. All right, I have to show you the Fratzonic exhaust from outside the car. I'm having a hard time being mad about this thing's existence. Honestly, it's kind of fun. And if you really dislike it, you can turn it off. It does not sound like a real engine. It sounds more like what you'd think a spaceship sounds like. I will tell you right now, I did not think this was at all cool sounding through videos. Video does not do it justice. It's a lot bassier than you think it is. It sounds like the future. Is it cheesy? Kinda. Is it fake? Absolutely, 100%. I would love to know how they arrived at this sound. I don't know. I like it. I can't help but like it. Now again, electric car, you're gonna have to charge it somewhere. That would be done here under the magic not at all a gas door. I do wish they'd figured out how to make this into a flip-top cap, but it is what it is. This is your standard charging port, and then I believe this hides the fancy fast charge adapter. Boop. Now there is one more thing I feel I need to mention, and that is weight. Electric cars are heavy. You've got electric motors front and rear in this car, and of course you've got big heavy battery packs. And that's in addition to all of the luxury stuff and, you know, a car body. This car apparently weighs about 5,600 pounds, and that is quite heavy. I will tell you, driving it, it doesn't feel like a pickup truck. Of course, the next thing we have to mention when talking about the weight of the car is tire wear. Electric cars are well known to go through tires more quickly, and especially one like this, which also has a bunch of power on tap to wear those tires down. I don't know what the lifespan is going to be, but I guarantee you it's less than a comparable gas car. This thing ships with Goodyear Eagle Sport all-season tires. They are Z-rated, which makes sense for a high-performance car like this. Obviously, because it's a modern car, it's riding on big, gigantic 20-inch rims. I think they fit the style of this thing just fine. They don't look out of place. I've never been a fan of the gigantic wheels on my Challenger in particular, but on this thing, they do seem right at home. It's riding on 275/40 ZR20s at all four corners. Obviously, I can't just take this thing home and live with it for a while, which I'd love to do. It would be really interesting to see one of these cars at 10,000 miles, at 20,000 miles, at 50,000 miles, and just check in, see how all the futuristic gizmos are doing, make sure things still work. I can tell you that they're offering an 8-year, 100,000-mile warranty on the electric powertrain and the high-voltage battery. And that seems pretty darn good. While we're looking at this fancy sheet, I suppose this is a good time to tell you that the base price of this car is $58,000. And the way this one is optioned, it's just under $71,000. We never even turned on the fancy Alpine sound system this thing is equipped with. That's certainly music. We seriously have not even scratched the surface of the features in here. It's got a fancy power flow screen, just like the original Prius had. There you can pull up the surround camera. Nice. It's been rumbling this whole time. I fixed it. I think that just about covers it. I don't know about you, but I think this thing's awesome. I'm not exactly ready to sign on the dotted line, but I could see driving and enjoying this car. It's practical, at least as practical as the two-door could be. It's fast, it's smooth, it is very comfortable. It does all the things. And I think it's really good looking. Although please, make mine dark red. My sincerest thanks again to 5-Star here in Aberdeen for letting me test out this new Charger. I don't know if you've noticed in the background, but their dealership is actually in the middle of a major renovation, which is apparently supposed to be done in exactly 38 days. My thanks again to my good friend Dustin for wasting his entire day letting me check this car out. I seriously appreciate it. I am definitely looking forward to checking out a gas-powered one, hopefully this summer, but I suppose we'll see. because it's an electric car, we now have to plug it in, you know, so it stays warm tonight. I suppose the construction crew could have made that harder. Wow. Not bad. Not bad at all. Hey, thanks for watching. And remember, make sure to put your charger on the charger, you know, so it can charge. And now, of course, we get back in Old Faithful and head home. Poor thing's getting wet. Yeah, I think I prefer that sound.